Welcome to Taiwan. Last episode we discussed the fall and the end of Dutch Taiwan. This episode we're going to be discussing the transition from Dutch Taiwan to the Kingdom of Tungning. We're going to see how society and the economy changed during this time. Because we have one side a colonial power, the other side a more or less a independent sovereign kingdom. So things will change, and things did change. After Koxinga's defeat of the Dutch. Also, check out this awesome painting I found about Koxinga's defeat of the Dutch. I'm so annoyed I couldn't put it in the last one. I found it right after I published the last one. So, after they took down the Dutch, the economy of Taiwan was to change forever. Under the Dutch rule, the economy was very much cash crop based. The cash crops, such as sugar canes, would be grown in Taiwan, here in Taiwan, and they'll be transported back to the Netherlands to be used in Dutch industry, to be used into Dutch profits, to be speculated on, or just straight up sold. But this is going to change now that the Dutch were gone. The 1661 invasion by Koxinga offered him a huge chance to change the economy of Taiwan. And Koxinga was seen as a national hero, and still is today actually, in many parts of China, both in Taiwan and on the mainland. He's seen as a big national hero fighting against foreign powers. However, this fame didn't protect him from death, and he died only a few months later after conquering Taiwan from the Dutch. His son, Zhongqing, continued his father's policies. He conscripted his soldiers into agriculture and got them to teach the native Taiwanese how to use the tools, how to use the animals. He wanted them to be more productive and generally produce much more. To do this, he also set up education centres. These education centres taught the Taiwanese how to read and write Chinese and how to read and write the classical literature. This is their first exposure to said classical Chinese literature and really began the Sinification of Taiwan for good. So interestingly, historians are divided on the idea of whether did Taiwan accept the Kingdom of Tungning readily or begrudgingly. Now, a lot of the Chinese sources I used, kind of unsurprisingly, say that they readily accepted them. There were book burnings, everyone was saying, yes, we hate the Dutch, long live the Jing dynasty, we love the Chinese, all's good. But a lot of contemporary Western sources disagree. They argue that the Taiwanese were split into two camps. You have begrudgingly accepting it and hating the Kingdom of Tungning. So you have those who would sort of partake of the education, maybe a book burning to sort of show their loyalty and stuff. They may say, oh, we didn't like the Dutch, but you guys are just another foreign power. What's the point and why should we care? And then you have those who absolutely hated them and would have even preferred the Dutch. And this actually continued quite interestingly until about the 19th century, when Westerners again arrived on Taiwan. And many tribes who still liked the Dutch, even that far removed, said, oh, the Dutch to come back for us. Life's good, we can be rid of the Chinese. Personally, I'm sort of in the middle. I think there were some tribes and some villages that did support the Dutch. But also I think there's many tribes that hated the Dutch. And especially on an individual family level, I think this divided the island. Because you do see some instances of especially in Dutch Taiwan, of people fighting against the Dutch. But then you also see instances of the Dutch being able to willingly use the Aboriginal help. So I think it's somewhere in the middle, which is kind of a boring answer. It's more fun to be a bit more like, oh, everyone hated them, everyone loved them. But I think it's a bit more truthful than both sort of on its own. During this period of the Kingdom of Tungning, international trade boomed and it really flourished. Because of the Dutch control, Taiwan was very much a part of European east to west trade routes. And so a lot of Europeans wanted to keep coming here, keep coming to Taiwan, as really they still do today. And so the Kingdom of Tungning allowed they didn't allow any colonization or missionaries, but what they did allow was trade posts, small trade posts sort of scattered around the island. So they came here for sort of many reasons, but one thing I found interesting as during my research I found an 800-page tome, a novel not really a novel, like just a book on sort of the experiences of the British in Taiwan. And I thought it'd be interesting to sort of read some excerpts and discuss this book, because it really describes everything, and because they wrote letters back about absolutely everything, from the culture to the economy to sort of fashion, absolutely everything. They recorded so much. So I'm going to read a little bit about that now, and again, every time I come here my hair goes crazy, and once again it's going crazy. So the East India Company, the Honourable English East India Company, as it wasn't formally British yet, and they set up a trading post in Java alongside the Dutch trading post, which anyone knows history knows the Dutch had a lot of control over Indonesia and the island of Java. But seeing how sort of wealthy and willing to trade the English East India Company was, Chongqing asked the British to set up a trade post to try and sort of encourage money to be flowing through Taiwan, get international investment. And the British said yes, of course they would. So after they set up their small trading post, their little building and offices, the British sort of wondered, what could we sell? And they discovered that sandalwood was probably the most important economic thing that they could trade back to Europe. Even to this day, sandalwood is incredibly expensive. It's the second most expensive wood there is, and using sort of oils and ointments, it's very pricey, and back then even more so. So the British traded sandalwood, and they also traded other things. There were still sugarcane farms, but sandalwood was the primary export by the British. The British also loved sending letters home and would write about the most mundane things, and they would write how fashion would change. The short hair was in vogue, it was the fashion to have short hair, but by the time they left, men especially were having their hair long. That was the fashion then. People let their hair grow out. So interesting enough, we can see how fashion changed from this period thanks to the writings of the European traders. This episode, as you see, we've discussed how the economy changed from an exploitative colonial economy to a standalone, independent, thriving international economy. If you want to see more, please like, comment and subscribe. The more interactions this video gets, especially on comments and likes, the more that this video is shown around and the more that people can see the amazing history of Taiwan. So thanks for watching. That bus is really loud, and I'll see you next time.